Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to the Business Mastery podcast. We moved to video in 2025 and beyond. So excited today. We're going to be talking about sales, but in relation to people's buying style, their buyer personality. What are some of the important things that we need to think about, because the message and the buyer have to match so that they can make a buying decision. So Nancy, thank you so much for joining me.
It's my honor and privilege. Can't wait to share a few nuggets with your audience.
Awesome. Can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
Dr. Nancy Zare. I am a sales psychologist, the creator of the Alike Ability System. Alike ability is a word that I coined. It's not about popularity. It's about having your prospect feel, sense, think that, wow, you get me, we're alike. Because when people feel we're alike, then they can relax, the trust builds, and that now we can do business together.
Amazing. All right. So let's just dive into buyer personalities and buyer types. And let's talk about the buyer types that you have discovered and who they are and what they do.
Well, it's not a discovery on my part. However, after 35 years of research, we have found that each of the 4 personality styles requires a different number of touch points or contacts before they can make up their mind. And so I'm sure that you and the audience are familiar with things like DISC. There's words, there are colors, there are animals. In fact, there are 200 personality systems out there. My contribution is noticing that the different styles have different needs in terms of the kinds of information that they're focusing on, the values they bring to the decision-making process, and the number of touch points before they can make up their minds.
Okay, what are they?
We've labeled them with the numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8. Number 2 represents the buyer who is very quick, decisive. They need only 1, maybe 2 contacts before they can move forward. Whereas the number 8 buyer, turn 8 on its side, it's the symbol for infinity. This is the person that takes 8 or more touch points before they can make a decision. And of course, the 4 needs about 3 or 4 touch points. Our 6 needs 5, 6, or 7, average of 6. Those are the 4 styles.
All right. And so we're going to relate this to the bell curve of buyers. So you have your early adopters, and those are the guys that'll camp out in front of the Apple store for a couple of days before the iPhone launches. And then you have your early adopters, right? And so each of these different bell curve buyer types or buyer styles has to do with social proof. But I want to ask you, are we the same for everything, or is it like the innovators for the Apple might be an 8 to buy a car?
Love that thinking, Dawn. Really, you're on target, because 30% of the population has just one style that tends to be their go-to. But 70%, notice that's a lot more than half, 70% of us go between 2 or more styles. So our social style might be that fast decision maker. They need they're the innovator, whereas the business style might be more thoughtful, needs research, and takes a while before they make up their mind.
And how does that relate to maybe the product or service, right? So some of us might be more considerate or considering things longer for certain types of purchases versus others. So, how does that also relate, right? So the 30% kind of do the same thing all the time, probably across products and service suites. But as 70% of the population, as you pointed out, greater than half, do we do it based on products and services?
Not really. It's really more based upon whether we've got our business hat on or whether we're in our social mode. Because think about it yourself, and listener, you think about it too. When you are making a decision that is a small decision, it doesn't really matter that much, you might have a particular style. But when it's a business decision or it's a high ticket purchase, you might have a very different style for making up your mind. Every one of us is a combination of all four styles. But as I suggest, there's one style that we go to for business and another style for personal issues.
Amazing. All right. So, just from a business perspective, business owner perspective, should we know whether our product appeals more to the social side, personal side, or maybe appeals more to like the business side, even if we're doing business to consumer versus business to business? Because I don't know that I've ever actually looked at my products and my services and said, this leans more one way or the other.
Dawn, your thinking is right on track because yes, each of our services and products is focused on either a more social side or a more business side, and hence we really do appeal to a different buyer. And when you think about some of the big brands out there, whether they're selling tennis shoes, sneakers, etc., or they're selling, as you mentioned, maybe computer products, etc., they know that their consumer is of a particular style. Are they the fast innovators or are they slow in making a decision? And hence, that product is promoted in that style. That's why I like to understand how buyers buy so that you can frame your product towards your ideal buyer.
All right. So, how, from a business owner perspective, do we even start to figure out what our style is?
Good question. And there are two answers or two things that combine in order to give you the answer. The first is, what's your style? Your style is going to get along with people like you more easily than people who aren't like you. Hence, you're kind of predisposed in that direction. But secondly, it's understanding your ideal prospect, who you like to work with. And in order to answer that, I usually have my clients present 2, 3, 4 of their favorite people that they either have or are working with now. We analyze their personality style. We make a composite, a sweet spot, and then that becomes your buyer persona. And now we know exactly what that style is, and we can use the right language to connect authentically and quickly with that style.
Right. So, question for some of the business owners out there that have sales staff. Do we have to worry at all that the business's kind of connection to buyers might be different than the salesperson? Is there a way to kind of make it so that it's pretty consistent across the board so that we stay in brand voice? How would we manage that?
Again, very astute for you to ask because salespeople tend to have, especially the really good salespeople, tend to be that number 2 style. They're quick, they're decisive, they're transactional, they want to get things done. And you love them as salespeople, don't you? Right? Because of the fact that they're the go-getters and they're pounding the pavement. They don't give up. They seem to have a thick skin. No does not deter them. On the other hand, your ideal prospect may not be transactional. Your ideal prospect might be a more cautious and thoughtful buyer. And if that's the case, your go-to go-getter salesperson is actually problematic and may clash with your ideal buyer. So you do need to consider those factors.
And let's talk about lead time to make a purchase, right? So if I'm buying an MRI machine for a hospital, it could be a 2-year buy cycle, 3-year buy cycle, who knows? We have to wait for funding, like all the things, right? And so we could be in the pipeline for a very, very long time with the same person. But something like I own a coffee roastery, right? It doesn't take much thought to buy a bag of coffee. So do we have to also consider that when we're considering, our style or how we meet people where they are?
Absolutely. Because of course, the product, the service that takes a while to decide and purchase, again, you're going to need salespeople to hang in there for the long run, as opposed to that quick salesperson who wants a transaction right away. So yes, all that plays into it. Our style is much more important than I think people recognize or realize at first glance.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the way you're describing it that you can change your style to match your customer, right? You don't have to use your innate style all the time, or is that not true?
So here's the scoop. It isn't that we change our style because our style, as it turns out, is pretty much inborn. It kind of coordinates with our brain processes. So you're not going to change your style, but you are going to change the words you use and the approach you make so that they match the prospect. Hence, that's why I am buyer-centric as a salesperson and not into the technique of how to sell. It's how to talk to your prospect and relate to them genuinely that matters.
Okay. So typically when you're sales training or if you're talking to salespeople, there's a couple of different approaches, right? So one approach is value-based, one approach is features-based, one approach, right? So there's multiple approaches to sales, depending on what it is that you're selling. How does this marry into, again, that style and building that relationship? Because I love this idea that it's very buyer-centric, right? You want to meet people where they are and help them make a decision. But it sounds like that it has to be maybe tailored a little bit, based on whether or not you're a 2 or an 8, based on the buy cycle that you have. That seems like a lot of information when most of the sales training out there in the world is like, oh no, just sell them on the value or just sell them on the features. How does this all fit together?
So it's the values of the buyer and not the values of your product or service that will connect and make the sale. You see, each of those 4 buyers has different values. And think about it, that's number 2 buyer. One of their values is speed, efficiency, results, bottom line, urgency. This person wants it off their plate right away. They also tend to buy status, and they're looking for to be the best, the only, at the top of the heap, right? The number 8 has very different values. Obviously, speed doesn't matter to them because they're taking a while to process. What matters to them is information, problem solving, being smart, understanding how things work, value over time. They don't mind spending more if they know that the results and that the item or the service they purchase has value over time and really helps them in the long run.
So what are the values? Yeah. So what are the values of the 4 and the 6?
The value of the 4 is to connect with you and to have a bond. They want to do good in society. They are the people that uphold causes. They want to do something of significance, feel that, they're bettering humankind. So they're all about buying a friend. So when they they want to connect with the salesperson as a friend, and they're buying you. They're actually not buying the service or product. So it's very important that you cultivate and nurture that relationship. The number 6, they're buying a process. They're buying security. They're buying safety. They want a system that is proven over time to get consistent results. And so, again, they're a little slower in making up their mind. For them, it's finding out from their network or looking up on directories or ratings, what is your rating? What's your product? What are the testimonies and reviews? They're looking for social proof versus our last buyer, the number 8, wants scientific evidence. Very different research that they're doing.
Right. Yeah. The number 6 sounds like the person that'll lurk for 2 years before making a purchase. Whereas, the number 8, maybe they also lurk, but they're looking for something different when they're lurking, right? So the number 6 is looking for what other people think about it, whether or not you're really there and consistent. And the number 8 is like, is this going to be, again, like you were saying, like a good value over time? But both of those sound like we've had people lurk in our Facebook group for 2 years, engage, interact, taste, a couple times at events and things, and just would not pull the trigger and buy a bag of coffee, probably for about 2 years. And I was insanely like, I hope they're just enjoying being in the community. I think this is, really great that they're still part of this. Isn't that interesting that they just want to keep watching?
Well, your number 6 buyer who is watching and collecting information socially is not necessarily a lurker. They just want to make sure that when they make the decision that it's safe and proven and tested and there's a history and it comes with, recommendations, even a guarantee. Your number 8, it's very interesting because they take a long time and they are the lurkers. They are the ones who are thinking and churning and evaluating and they're collecting, like I say, more of the scientific basis as to why the coffee has that aroma and why it creates that wonderful taste. And once they understand scientifically that this is the best, then they almost become a number two. I want it now. Give it to me now. No delay. Let's do it. So
That's
it's going to be very different.
Yeah, let's talk about these sixes and eights though, because it sounds like when they make the decision, they're not going anywhere, right? So we've got customers who've been doing business with us for, we're almost 4 years old, so almost 4 years. And they're always here. And it really feels like that is the sixes and the eights are incredibly loyal.
The sixes are true blue. Again, they're the ones who want things that are tried and proven. And so unless you really goof up and you just are a mess, they're going to stay with you. Like you said, they're true blue customers. Your number eights, of course, they spent a long time coming to this decision. Hence, they get very stubborn. And so it's not loyalty, it's stubbornness. They want to prove that they thought correctly.
They made the right
smart decision.
Right.
Exactly. And so unless there's new evidence to the contrary, again, they do stay with you. Your number two, of course, they came and they went. They came, they went. They're very flighty.
Okay. So let's talk about, you mentioned something like guarantees and things like that. Have you found in your research that it's not just the sixes that maybe want the guarantee, but are there things that we can do in the sales process that brings comfort to all four types that maybe we're not so aware of, right? We know that a lot of like online courses and stuff used to do 14-day money-back guarantees and those kinds of things. I don't know that it drove sales up or down because I'm not in that area, but I do remember seeing a lot of that. Interestingly, though, the grocery store doesn't give you a guarantee if you try that new product that they just brought in and they put a coupon and they hyped up. Obviously, though, I think most of us understand that things like grocery goods, if you can return and get your money back. Is there something that we can do if it's not an intuitive thing in your line of work? Satisfaction guarantee. I love that. I don't know how much that resonates with people anymore. I don't know if it's become so intuitive because Amazon will take back just about anything. And in a small business that's not Amazon or Walmart or Chiefs or, these large companies, is there something that we could do or that's expected to move people through, like maybe not quicker, but with more confidence?
It goes back to knowing who your ideal audience, your prospect and customer is, as opposed to there is not a one size fits all. That guarantee, that sense of, reducing risk is absolutely a characteristic of the number six buyer. Now, remember, we have all four styles within us. So there's some part of us that might respond to that guarantee. But if we go to the number eight, they're not looking for a guarantee. They don't want to be guaranteed that something is scientifically a mess. They want a guarantee that scientifically the science is there that supports the decision. The number four is looking for, if I can again kind of stretch the word guarantee, they want to guarantee that the relationship matters, that it's about our connection and doing business together and feeling that we are collaborating and we're in it together, we're community. That is what's going to appeal to the number four. So guarantee is not the right word to use. It's really, I care about you. That expression, it doesn't matter how much you know until someone knows how much you care. That is what the number four is looking for. I need to know you care about me, not just that I purchased your coffee. So you can see it's different values. And the biggest mistake we make, and listener, take this down as a note. We project our style onto the buyer. So however it is you make a buying decision, there's a good chance you're projecting that onto the buyer. So if you needed information scientifically and you needed to read the research, you're probably assuming that fast buyer needs more information before they can say yes. And you're going to lose a sale.
All right. So let's just take this down to, I am probably thinking within the first minute, you can, if you understand this information, that you'll know how to approach a particular buyer, right? So what do they say? There are certain tools of the trade, if you will, like silence is golden. When somebody is thinking or they're shopping or they're talking to whatever, you just stand there. You don't say a word. You have to get very, very comfortable with uncomfortable silence while people are making decisions. Other than that, within that first minute, or maybe longer, I don't know, I'm asking, how do we figure out who it is we are across the table from, or we are, giving a sample to or speaking with, so that we don't blow the sale?
There are 6 characteristics that I teach my clients to notice, and you can identify somebody in less than a minute. In fact, you can identify their style, especially if you're doing sales that are not necessarily in person, maybe online. You can go to somebody's online material and identify their style before you talk to them, you meet with them. So here are the 6 methods. One is how they dress, the colors they use, the textures, the accessories, their makeup, their facial hair. All of these are part of how someone appears, and they tell you what the style is. Second, their vocal qualities, how they talk. Fast, slow, emphasis, stress, quick, all of those things will tell you. The third is how they write. Do they write in full sentences and paragraphs, or is it bullet points? Again, do they make spelling errors? Do they, etc.? These are all clues. And along with writing is how they're going to post on social media, because which platforms they use and where they post is another good clue. The fifth is how they behave. And this happens like, do they come late or early to an appointment? Are they on time? And do they shake your hand, high five? These are all signals about what their style is. And the last one is decorations. So when you go to somebody's office, or now as you look at a video conference call, what's the background? What's the scenery? Because how they decorate tells you about their style.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, this is so important. It sounds like, particularly for maybe higher value sales and longer lead times, you want to research your clients. The days of Sarah Blakely going door to door selling fax machines is probably just not the way of the world anymore. And it's so interesting because we do change and grow based on what the markets are doing and based on what happened. And pandemic is just an excellent example of that a lot of in-person events and things still haven't quite recovered, that where people would have gone and done trade shows and things, a lot of them are just not still at the place they were, in 2019 or so. So, what are your thoughts about, the higher ticket, long lead time across buyer types? What are some good approaches?
I'm all about creating relationships and nurturing relationships. That in the long run is what's going to make you successful as a business. That number 2 buyer who's very quick, most of the marketing appeals to them. They talk about urgency and deadlines and fear of missing out, and there's one left and all that stuff. That appeals to the number 2, but the other 3 buyers, it absolutely turns them off.
Yeah.
And so you need to develop a relationship based upon their values, not yours, their values. And again, with that number 4, their values is about service and doing unto others and making the world a better place. And with the number 6, it's about safety and security and lack of surprises, having things predictable. And with the number 8, it's about information and knowledge and an understanding of how things work. So when you talk the language of values, that's when you're going to connect quickly and authentically, and you'll go on to do business together. It's relationships.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about then building those kind of relationships online. It sounds like, just from what I'm picking up here, on the 4s, right, they're going to want those consistent newsletters, that predictability. They're going to want to see you posting and giving information. The 6s, they're going to potentially want, I guess, the information in a way that allows them to, I guess, see that it works, right, over time, and that they're going to, again, want that consumer expectation met. And then the eights, they're going to want that education on your products and services, and they're going to want to get more of the technical data or more of the, I guess what I would call the deeper dive into what it is that you do and offer. So let's talk about social media, because a lot of companies do social media as a huge form of marketing. And, social media generally is broken down into like know, like, and trust, right? So when people say there's an awareness post, there's a this post, there's a that post, it actually sounds like maybe instead of doing posts, know, like, and trust, or awareness, acceptance, conversion, or whatever it is, maybe we should tweak our social media marketing a little bit to appeal to the values of these three buyer types. The twos, I'm going to just say, forget the twos. I love the twos. They're wonderful, but you're right. Sometimes they don't stick around.
They don't stick around. And actually, we tend to market to them all the time by, flash sales and, discounts and all that, because that's the two. They're quick and impulsive to make a decision. Our number 4, we want to market to them by building relationships. And so we want to invite them to a community. You have a community, you mentioned, and hence that's where number 4s are getting their, they're getting a sense of feeling good feelings from you.
Are those the ones that are going to be in the engagement posts? Like if you say, do you like A or B?
Like,
or do you, yes. Okay. All right. So the 4s are
like, and they have emojis, and they put gifts up and all that stuff, because they want to connect with you and feel like we're part of the same family, and I drink your coffee, and we're community because we share that in common. That's your number 4. And so they want to hear about you personally and feel like they have some inside information about you as a person, not you, the businesswoman, but you, the person. Your number 6, they like that consistency, that steadiness, that, every week on Tuesday we have a tip. It's like I can count on you to put in a tip or a recipe or whatever it might be. So again, different, and who your buyers are. And so, like you say, that number 6 is very, blue and loyal to you. Hence, you probably want to mostly attract more of them because they're going to stick with your brand forever.
Yeah, I love that. All right. And what about those aids? Is that just the educational side of things, giving them some of the technical stuff? So that is, this is such a cool perspective, because if you are, and most businesses are doing social media marketing, instead of going for that awareness conversion, maybe we start thinking about, are we doing enough behind the scenes? Are we doing enough relationship building for the 4s? Are we doing enough consistencies, right? Are we sending those newsletters every other week for the 6s? And then for the 8s, it's, are we giving enough education? Are we inviting people to ask questions? Are we giving them maybe links and places to go to learn more about the industry as a whole before they make a buying decision? I really think that that's going to be a very powerful change. And I would encourage everybody who's watching or listening to kind of think about their marketing strategy, because I'll be honest with you, I've seen some incredible marketing strategies, and some of them were always like you said, tips on Tuesday. And I always, after a while, got, man, doesn't that get boring? But now I see for some buyer types, that's incredibly important. And I'm sitting here going, I never should have discounted that, because it sounds like it brings comfort to the 6s, right?
It does.
It does. So, it sounds like...
So let me go back again to, we project our style. And your style is not really high 6. So that's not your main style. Hence, that's why you're bored. You've got a lot of 2 in you. You're bored with something that is so consistent and rote and routine. It's a turnoff to you. So notice, we can't be one size fits all.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I was thinking about this. It's like, do we do enough behind the scenes content? We do a lot of education, because I absolutely adore sharing a lot of the behind the scenes, and the number of people that drink coffee in the world that have never seen a naked coffee bean. I get it. So we make sure to show people naked coffee beans, right, when they first come in from the suppliers. But this is such a fascinating way to look at this. And this really kind of, again, sort of hammers home that meet people where they are. And it also sounds that between the quality, the consistency, the authenticity, the things that you want to have in a business, deep service, that is going to really, over time anyway, build your customer base. Because again, some people might be a very long lead time buyer, even though the product or service is not typically something that needs a huge decision.
But it's a huge decision for the person who's been using a brand coffee for all these years to switch over to your brand. Right. And so while it didn't see, and I agree with you, financially, it's not a big decision to purchase, a bag of coffee, right? Or a cup even, and try it out. But for the person who's got brand loyalty, it's huge to get them to take that step.
I think that is the one thing is having that patience, right? So the first 3, 6, 12 months that you're in business and, you've got certain types of buyers and things, but then understanding that when I saw, like I was saying, that one person that was in our group for 2 years, when they finally came in and bought a bag, they didn't just come in and do a tasting. They didn't just come in and do the things. They actually bought a bag. I was like, isn't that so interesting that it took them a very long time. And whether or not they purchase from us, we love just having people in our world anyway. But I just thought that was very, very interesting. And it was kind of that proof positive to me as a very young business that you just keep doing it. You just keep doing it every month, showing up every month, and you will eventually get everybody who's meant to be your customer. Can't rush it, I guess is what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Rush it.
Yeah. And you're right. I think it's a mistake, again, that many of us make, because those of us who are entrepreneurs have a certain amount of the number 2 style in us.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are transactional. We are quick. We are decisive. We want to see results right away. And so for us to recognize that we start a business and it will not yield 10x overnight is really hard. And it takes a lot, like you say, patience, or perhaps understanding of that cycle, because it does take a while for business to get established and get traction.
So let me ask you a little bit deeper about that and about kind of the patience of building these relationships. So from your research, again, the 2s are great because it's cash injection, if you will, but they just don't necessarily stick around. But from all of your research, would you say that it takes a business kind of X amount of time to determine whether or not, the market is going to be responsive to a particular offer or a particular thing? When I'm consulting people, I say, don't pull your offer for at least 90 days, right? If you've done the market research, if you've designed it, if you've done those things, then you have to leave it out there for at least 90 days. Now I'm wondering if that's either too short of a cycle or if 90 days is good for more of an established business that has a lot more data behind who their buyer types are.
You said something very important, which is to do research before you launch a product or have an offer. And so if you've done the research and you know that your market has an interest in this, then it takes an average, average is a funny word, but 70% of sales take place after 6 contacts.
Oh, okay.
So what's a contact? Well, a contact is what you and I are doing right now is in real time, we're having a conversation. So whether that takes place in person, on video, via telephone, it's in real time. But most of the communication today is taking place virtually. I send you a text message. A while later, you may or may not read it, and then you may or may not respond. And that delay in time is what creates a lack of connection between us. And so if I want to speed up connections, I need to do things in real time. And So hence 70% of sales are made after 6 touch points. And nowadays, people are, of course, going to the web, doing research, seeing our posts, etc. These are touch points, but they don't count as a full touch point because they're not in real time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, kind of going back to the understanding that you have to leave it out there, you have to get it into the hands of enough people, you have to do your market research, of course. But you really gave a lot of great perspective and insight in how we are marketing and, like you were saying, projecting onto other people the fact that I would get bored, it's like, oh, it's this tip Tuesday or whatever. And it's not that I get annoyed by it or anything, but I don't think about that repetitive nature even in our own marketing. I do have, though, amazing marketing people that will do that stuff for me. But, I never really kind of thought of it that way. And I think that's a fascinating perspective. And I think there's a lot of really great information here for people to look at what they're doing and how they're doing it and whether or not they are embracing this idea of meeting people where they are. I think in business, I think we're supposed to know that, but a lot of business is not intuitive, right? It's just not intuitive. And a lot of us trip and fall into success and we get up and we go, how'd we get here? And then when we try to do something else with it later on and we try to expand it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, why am I plateauing? Oh, why are things stalling? And a lot of it could be things like these really important considerations to be able to expand the marketplace from those innovators, early adopters, early majority, into those kind of later majority phases of business as far as buyers go.
So again, think about television and radio advertising commercials. That same commercial comes on every day at that same time. And it takes, again, 6, 8, 10 times before we say to ourselves, oh, I've seen it, I've heard it. Because again, it's like a stop sign. We get so used to it on the roadside that we don't pay any attention. And that's why there's a repetition in order to bring home the message, because we are not functioning in real time. Most of us are thinking about something in the past or projecting into the future, and hence we're not present to hear and see.
So this is an important question that I have for you, and that is the impact of the bigger market forces on customer perception over time. So this is the example I use, and everybody on the podcast has heard it at least 6 times, so don't at me. I'm using it again. It was September of 2023, and I was watching, I think it was a video on YouTube, and a 15-second spot came up from Coffee Mate, which is Nestle, which is obviously an adjacent product to a coffee roastery, right? People buy Nestle Coffee Mate, and it said you can make 20 coffee house style drinks at home for the price of, one takeout, was their message. And I went, that is so interesting, because normally when you see Coffee Mate creamer, the experience and the indulgence and set time aside in the day to enjoy the richness of French vanilla or whatever it is. And I went, isn't that interesting? They went from experiential marketing to value marketing. And I thought to myself, I don't have the budget of a Nestle. I don't have the $100 gazillion to sway consumer behavior generally. So what do I need to do inside my business to kind of get on that sort of messaging train? How important is that as far as us meeting people where they are and matching their sales styles when somebody much bigger with a much bigger budget is driving some aspect of consumer behavior?
So let me analyze really quickly that particular message. That message was about, you spend a certain amount of money, but you get 20 times the result. That is going to appeal to the number 6. Our number 6 buyer is very budget conscious. And as I said, they're also very brand loyal. So once they're going to get on that particular train, they're going to stay in the train. And so that messaging is going for that person who is that strong six, following a budget, wants to get as many cups of coffee as they can for whatever the dollars they spent. The experiential message, which you mentioned, it preceded it, happened before that.
Yeah.
Now, the feel or the texture or the taste or the aroma, that's appealing more to that number 4 or even the number 2, because they are much more in tune with their gut and the experience. Especially the number 2 grabs for the gusto. They love to experience things to the full. So again, they're just messaging to one style of buyer, but they're choosing that message and being consistent with it over time.
So this is very interesting, and I'm going to go out here because I don't know for sure and ask: did Nestle change their marketing style and messaging because we were kind of having some economic issues to get that long-term loyal buyer? So in other words, we have the 4s, we have the 2s. We need to now show our messaging to these 6s because we know once they make that decision, they're going to stick. And even in an economic downturn, they won't change their mind. Is that the science behind that marketing? Because that's
exactly. And I mean, I'm not there in corporate headquarters.
Right.
But what you're saying makes sense, right?
I really think so. And again, I was looking at it more from they're switching their style of marketing. And again, looking at the economy and things. And that's, against the backdrop of all the news that was talking about inflation and consumer behavior and everything so much more expensive. That's about the time it really started. And oh, by the way, in order for them to produce commercials and stuff, it's not like they could do it on a Tuesday and launch it on a Thursday. So, they had to be a little bit ahead to decide to change their marketing. But isn't that fascinating that they were, because I was looking at it as they have the bigger budget, they're driving consumer behavior. And so we need to do things. So what did we do? We started putting out recipes and more ways to use the coffee, right? To feel like you were getting a better value. But I wasn't looking at it as they also potentially changed their target buyer type because they needed to lock in that brand loyalty just in case there really was some economic challenges, that they could still have maybe a more predictable revenue, because maybe the 4s would at that point not be as loyal as those 6s. And if that is truly what happened behind the scene, that's incredibly fascinating, that they're also changing buyer type based on keeping customers who might otherwise make a different decision based on what's going on in the market.
And remember, we are a combination of all 4 styles. Yeah, there is a part of everyone, especially when there's an economic downturn or the threat of inflation, that people might become more budget conscious. Hence, that message would appeal to the budget conscious buyer.
I love it. Where can people find you, follow you, learn more about you, and connect with you? Because it's just fascinating, and I think it's really helpful.
My playground is the likability. My playground is LinkedIn, and that's where you'll find me. LinkedIn with my name, Nancy Zare. And I'm also, of course, on Facebook and Instagram and so forth. But I'd say that's the best place to go. Look me up. Of course, I do have a website. But nowadays, websites are not where people check you out initially.
Not anymore. It's interesting, isn't it? Again, kind of that buyer consumer behavior and how we evolve over time. The one thing about sales I have to say is it's incredibly fascinating. But after 35 years, if you can still bin those 4 types, and like you said earlier, the disc and things like that, isn't that interesting? That no matter how much we evolve in the marketplace and we evolve as consumers, we still really kind of fit into just 4 basic types to market to. I think it's very interesting. It says a lot about us as human beings, that no matter how much we evolve, we still kind of have these fundamental things that we resonate with, and it's pretty cool. So
yeah, it is for
thank
sure.
you so much for this conversation, for being here, and we will put everything down inside the show notes, so you can go right down and find the links to connect with Nancy. And thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
To your sales success.
You your sales success. All right. We'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to dawnkennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.